6 months after the stars danced, War Prime Krextal stood in a place he never thought he would see, the diplomatic reception hall on Earth's orbital station. But he was not there as a conqueror. He was there as a student. The hall was beautiful in a way that the Vorthak had never learned to appreciate. Instead of the sharp edges and dark metal that covered their ships, everything here was curved and bright. Large windows showed the blue and green planet below, while soft lights made the room feel warm and welcoming. Krextal felt uncomfortable, not because of any physical danger, but because everything about this place challenged what he thought he knew about power. The humans who built this station could make stars dance, but they chose to fill their space with art and music and growing plants. Admiral Park Ji-woo entered the room and bowed politely. The old human moved slowly but confidently, and his eyes held a kindness that Krextal had never seen in the eyes of a warrior. "Welcome to Earth, War Prime Krextal," Admiral Park Ji-woo said. "We are honored by your visit." Krextal struggled to find the right words. In his culture, meetings between leaders were about showing strength and demanding respect. But the Admiral was treating him like a guest, not an enemy. "I have come to understand," Krextal said finally. "Your people showed us something that we did not know was possible. We wish to learn. Learning is what we do best," Admiral Park Ji-woo replied. "Please sit. Let us talk." Over the next several hours, Krextal learned things that changed his understanding of the galaxy. Dr. Bang Soo-jin, humanities cultural exchange specialist, explained how humans had spent centuries developing technology not for war, but for creation. "We discovered early in our history that the greatest victories come not from defeating enemies, but from turning enemies into friends," Dr. Bang Soo-jin said. "Every war we fought taught us that destroying things was easy, but building things was hard. And building things was more rewarding." She showed Krextal images of human colonies that had once been dead rocks floating in space. Through careful application of stellar engineering and atmospheric manipulation, humans had turned lifeless worlds into gardens filled with every kind of life imaginable. "Your people have great strength," Dr. Bang Soo-jin continued. "You have built an empire that spans hundreds of worlds, but you use that strength only to take things. We want to show you how to use strength to give things." Krextal looked at the images of transformed worlds and felt something he had never experienced before, a desire to create rather than destroy. Captain Hwang Ji-min was having a similar conversation on the first joint human Vorthak exploration vessel, the New Horizon. The ship was a strange combination of human creativity and Vorthak engineering, designed to carry both species to places neither had ever been. "Your people are good at building strong things," Captain Hwang Ji-min told her Vorthak counterpart, Sub-Commander Vexnal. "Our people are good at building beautiful things. Together, we can build things that are both strong and beautiful." Sub-Commander Vexnal was struggling to understand human concepts like cooperation and shared benefit. In Vorthak culture, any interaction between different groups was a contest to see who would dominate whom. "But why would you share your technology with us?" Vexnal asked. "We came to conquer you. You could have destroyed us. Why do you not take revenge?" Captain Hwang Ji-min smiled. "Because revenge does not build anything. Revenge only destroys. We have learned that the best way to make ourselves safe is to make our neighbors happy." The New Horizon was on its way to the Rigel system, where the Vorthak had conquered a species called the Melody, 300 years earlier. The Melody were artists and musicians who had never developed strong weapons. The Vorthak had enslaved them and forced them to work in mining operations. "We are going to set them free," Captain Hwang Ji-min explained. "And then we are going to ask them to teach us their music. We think you might like to learn too." Across the galaxy, similar missions were happening on dozens of worlds. The 43 species that the Vorthak had conquered were being offered something they had never expected: freedom and friendship. Dr. Kim Hee-jin led the terraforming teams that were helping former slave worlds rebuild their civilizations. Her work involved using the same stellar manipulation technology that had made the stars dance. But now it was being used to heal damaged ecosystems and restore poisoned atmospheres. "The hardest part is not the science," Dr. Kim Hee-jin explained to a group of former Vorthak officers who were learning to be healers instead of conquerors. "The hardest part is helping people remember how to hope." She showed them a world called Thyros, where the Vorthak had strip-mined the surface for rare metals. The planet had been a desert wasteland for 200 years. But now, using controlled solar radiation and atmospheric processors, human engineers were bringing it back to life. "Watch," Dr. Kim Hee-jin said, pointing to a screen that showed the planet's surface. "We start with water." Across the desert, machines were releasing moisture into the air. But this was not just random rainfall. The water was being placed exactly where it was needed, creating patterns that would support the growth of plants and trees. "Then we add soil," she continued. The machines began spreading a mixture of organic compounds that had been created using stellar fusion processes. "Then we add seeds." The Vorthak officers watched in amazement as green began to appear on the dead world. In just a few weeks, Theros was starting to look alive again. "This is what we do," Dr. Kim Hee-jin said. "We take broken things and make them whole. We take empty places and fill them with life. We take sadness and turn it into joy." One of the Vorthak officers, a female named Kristara, raised her hand. "But why? This planet was not yours. These people are not your responsibility. Why do you care what happens to them?" Dr. Kim Hee-jin looked at her with the same patient kindness that humans had been showing to all their former enemies. "Because making things better makes us happy," she said. "We discovered long ago that the more joy we create in the galaxy, the more joy we have for ourselves. It is not a trade. It is a gift that grows when you give it away." Back on Earth, Admiral Park Ji-woo was meeting with representatives from all the species that had been touched by the conflict. The orbital station's main conference room held beings from dozens of different worlds, all sitting together and discussing plans for the future. The gathering was unprecedented. For the first time in galactic history, former enemies were working together to solve problems instead of creating them. "We propose to call it the Garden," Admiral Park Ji-woo said, gesturing to a holographic map that showed the local sector of the galaxy. "Not an empire, not a federation, but a community. Each world free to govern itself, but all worlds connected by shared knowledge and mutual support." The Melody representative, a graceful being named Song of Distant Stars, spoke in a voice like music. "Our people would be honored to contribute our arts to such a community." The representative of the Kthari, a species of natural engineers, offered their expertise in building sustainable cities. The Yathani, who were master farmers, promised to share their knowledge of growing food in harsh environments. Even War Prime Krextal, who was still learning to think of cooperation instead of conquest, offered the resources and organizational skills of the Vorthak Empire. "We have much to learn," he admitted, "but we have strong ships and disciplined crews. We can help protect the peaceful worlds from other threats that might come from beyond our borders." Admiral Park Ji-woo nodded approvingly. "The Garden will need guardians, but guardians who protect, not conquerors who destroy." As the meeting continued, it became clear that something extraordinary was happening. The species that had been scattered and isolated across the galaxy were coming together to create something larger than any of them could build alone. Years passed, and the garden grew. What had started as humanity's response to a threat became a new model for how different species could live together. Worlds that had been barren became fertile. Civilizations that had been enslaved became free. Art and music and knowledge flowed between the stars like rivers of light. Dr. Yoon Sera, now an old woman, often stood at her control station and watched the displays that showed stellar activity across the garden. The stars no longer danced in patterns of war. Instead, they pulsed gently with energy that powered atmospheric processors, terraform engines, and the countless machines that were turning the galaxy into a place where life could flourish. Sometimes, visitors from distant parts of the galaxy would arrive and ask the same question that the Vorthak had once asked. "How did you defeat such a powerful empire?" And the answer was always the same, given with the calm smile that had once puzzled alien analysts. "We did not defeat them. We showed them something better." In the space between those words, stars continued to shine with controlled fire, worlds continued to bloom with new life, and humanity continued to prove that the greatest victory was not submission, but transformation. The galaxy had learned to garden itself, and nothing would ever be the same. At exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, Universal Standard Time, humanity showed the galaxy what they could really do. Dr. Yoon Sera sat in the primary control station deep beneath Earth's surface, her hands steady on controls that connected to devices scattered across dozens of star systems. She had spent 20 years learning how to make this moment possible. Now, as she pressed the activation sequence, she felt completely calm. Initiating stellar resonance cascade, she announced to the control room. All stations report ready. On the main screen, hundreds of green lights appeared, each one representing a quantum satellite positioned around the star closest to the Vorthak fleet. The star was called Kepler 442, a yellow dwarf that had been shining peacefully for billions of years. In the next few minutes, it would become humanity's paintbrush. War Prime Krextal stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching space through the massive front window. His fleet of 10,000 ships floated in perfect formation around the human star system. Each ship was armed with weapons that could crack planets in half. Together, they represented enough firepower to sterilize every world in the local sector. But Krextal was not feeling confident anymore. Something was wrong. His sensors were detecting energy patterns that should not exist. The humans were doing something that his science advisors said was impossible. War Prime called out his sensor operator. Massive energy spike detected from the local star. All readings are off the scale. Krextal looked at the yellow star that his fleet was using for navigation. It appeared normal, just a ball of burning gas 93 million miles away. But as he watched, something extraordinary began to happen. The star flared, but this was not a normal solar flare. Those were chaotic, random bursts of energy that happened when magnetic fields tangled and snapped. This flare was different. It was controlled, precise, and beautiful. Streams of plasma began flowing out from the star's surface in perfect spirals. The burning gas moved in patterns that followed mathematical rules, creating shapes that could be seen from millions of miles away. It was as if someone had reached out and begun conducting an orchestra made of fire. "That is impossible," whispered Yexmar, the Vorthak science officer. "No one can control stellar plasma. The energies involved are beyond comprehension." But the star continued its dance. The plasma streams wove together like golden ribbons, forming complex geometric patterns in space. Krextal realized that he was watching someone casually manipulate forces that could power entire civilizations. On Earth, Dr. Yoon Sarah smiled as her instruments confirmed that everything was working perfectly. The quantum satellites were using resonance fields to create magnetic bottles around sections of the star's surface. By adjusting the field strength and frequency, they could guide plasma flows with pinpoint accuracy. "Phase 1 complete," she reported. "Beginning Phase 2. Across human space, other stars began to wake up. Engineer Im Dong-woo coordinated the symphony from his station on Europa. His screen showed the locations of 47 different star systems, each one equipped with its own network of control satellites. As he entered commands, distant suns began to respond. The star near the Mars colonies suddenly brightened, then dimmed, then brightened again in a pattern that repeated every 30 seconds. The star that warmed the agricultural worlds began to pulse with colors that should not exist, cycling through shades of blue and green and gold that painted the surrounding space with impossible beauty. Near the research stations in the outer systems, an ancient red giant began to spin streams of plasma in perfect helixes, creating structures of fire that stretched for millions of miles. Each pattern was different, but they all followed the same underlying mathematics. The Vorthak fleet watched in stunned silence as humanity turned the galaxy into an art gallery. "How are they doing this?" Krextal demanded. Yexmar was frantically checking his instruments, but nothing made sense. "War Prime, they appear to have placed devices around multiple stars. The devices are somehow manipulating stellar magnetic fields on a massive scale, but the technology required..." He paused, his voice shaking. "War Prime, this should not be possible. The energy requirements alone would drain the entire output of our homeworld." Captain Nam Gite chose that moment to broadcast another message to the Vorthak fleet. His small ship looked like a tiny speck compared to the alien warships, but his voice carried the confidence of someone who held all the cards. "Greetings again, War Prime Krextal. I hope you are enjoying our little demonstration, but we are just getting started." On the main screen of Krextal's ship, the image changed to show a view of space from high above the galactic plane. Dozens of star systems were visible, each one a tiny point of light. As the Vorthak watched, the stars began to flicker in sequence like lights on a massive display board. The pattern they created was unmistakable. It was a mathematical proof, written in starlight across hundreds of light years of space. The proof demonstrated principles of physics that the Vorthak had never discovered. It showed equations that their greatest scientists could not understand. "This is our answer to your demand for submission," Captain Nam Gite continued. "We are not a species that kneels. We are gardeners of light, Shepherds of fire, teachers of stars. We do not conquer worlds. We cultivate them. But the demonstration was not over. Scientist Jo Yun-ha, working from a hidden facility in the Centauri system, activated the final phase of humanity's response. Her equipment reached out to the quantum structure of space itself, bending the basic rules of physics in ways that made reality itself into a canvas. The space around the Vorthak fleet began to shimmer. Colors that had no names appeared in the emptiness between stars. Patterns of light danced through the void, spelling out messages in languages that the Vorthak could understand. Despite never having heard them before, the messages were simple, but their implications were terrifying. We are the species that make stars dance. We are the people who paint with fire. We are humanity, and we are not impressed. War Prime Krextal felt something that he had never experienced in 3 centuries of conquest. It was not just fear, though fear was part of it. It was the sudden understanding that everything he thought he knew about power was wrong. The Vorthak Empire was built on simple principles. Find a species weaker than yourself, threaten them with destruction. Take their worlds and their resources. It had worked perfectly for hundreds of years against dozens of different civilizations. But humans were not like other species. They did not think in terms of ships and weapons and territory. They thought in terms of stars and galaxies and the fundamental forces of creation itself. War Prime, Yexmar reported, his voice barely a whisper. Our tactical computers cannot calculate a response to this display. They are asking for weapons capable of destroying entire star systems simultaneously. We do not possess such weapons. Could we build them? Krextal asked. War Prime, we could not build them if we had 1,000 years and the resources of every world in our empire. What the humans are doing requires understanding of physics that we have never achieved. They are manipulating stellar fusion as easily as we might adjust a weapons targeting system. The stars continued their impossible dance, creating patterns of beauty that hurt to look at directly. Each pulse of plasma, each twist of magnetic fire, was perfectly controlled and impossibly precise. Dr. Yoon Se-ra spoke into her communication system, broadcasting to the Vorthak fleet on all frequencies. War Prime Krextal, you asked us to surrender our worlds, our technology, and our freedom. We decline, but we offer you something better. We offer you the chance to learn, to grow, to become something more than conquerors. Your empire was built on fear. Ours is built on wonder. Your strength comes from taking things away from others. Our strength comes from creating things that never existed before. The choice is yours. You can leave our space and return to your people with the knowledge that there are forces in this galaxy that you do not understand. Or you can stay and learn why humanity has never been conquered and never will be. The stellar dance reached its climax. Every star under human influence pulsed once in perfect synchronization, sending waves of light racing across the galaxy at impossible speeds. For one brief moment, anyone looking up at the night sky from any world in the local sector would see every star flicker at exactly the same time. It was humanity's signature, written across the cosmos in letters of fire. The message was clear. Any species that could casually reprogram stellar behavior could erase the Vorthak from existence without even trying. This was not a threat. It was simply a statement of fact. War Prime Krextal stood in silence for a long moment, watching stars dance to humanity's will. Then, for the first time in his 300 years of conquest, he gave an order he had never given before. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "We are leaving." Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars through the large front window. The Harmony's Edge was a peaceful ship, built for talking to new people, not for fighting. For 300 years, humans had been traveling between stars, building homes on new worlds and trading with each other. Everything was calm and good. That morning started like any other. Lee Dae-ho was drinking his coffee and reading reports from the colonies. His crew was relaxed, checking their instruments and making small talk. The ship was traveling near a system called Kepler 442, where humans had found some interesting planets to study. Then the alarms started ringing. "Captain," called out Officer Yang Min-soo from his station. "Something big just appeared on our screens." "Really big?" Lee Dae-ho put down his coffee and walked to the main display. What he saw made his blood run cold. Massive ships, each one 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. surrounded his small vessel. The alien ships were dark gray and covered in sharp edges that looked like weapons. They moved in perfect formation, like hungry sharks circling their prey. "Try to contact them," Lee Dae-ho ordered. His voice stayed calm, but his hands shook slightly. Before his communications officer could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up with the same image. A creature that looked nothing like a human stared back at them. It had 4 arms, skin like black metal, and eyes that glowed red. When it spoke, the ship's computer translated its words into Korean. "I am War Prime Krextal of the Vorthak Hegemony," the creature said. Its voice was deep and cold. "You are humans. We have studied your kind. You are weak." Lee Dae-ho stepped forward. "I am Captain Lee Dae-ho. We come in peace. We want to talk and learn about each other." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like metal breaking. "Peace talk? You do not understand. We do not talk to food animals. We own them." The screens around the bridge changed to show different views. Lee Dae-ho saw hundreds of alien ships all pointed toward human space. Each ship was armed with weapons that could destroy planets. The captain felt sick to his stomach. "Listen carefully, human," Krextal continued. "The Vorthak hegemony rules 400 worlds. We have conquered 43 different species. Now we will conquer you. You have 7 of your planet's days to surrender everything. Your worlds, your ships, your technology, your lives. You will serve us or you will die." To prove their power, the aliens turned their weapons on a nearby mining station. The station was empty of people, but it was huge, made of the strongest metals humans could make. The alien weapons fired beams of purple light. In 3 seconds, the station was gone. Not destroyed, not broken, just gone. Where solid metal had been, there was now only glowing gas. 7 days, Krextal repeated. "Choose wisely." The transmission ended. Lee Dae-ho looked around his bridge. His crew stared back at him with wide eyes. Young Officer Park Soo-jin was crying quietly. Engineer Lim Tae-ho was shaking his head in disbelief. "Send a message to Earth immediately," Lee Dae-ho ordered. "Emergency priority. Tell them what happened here." The message traveled faster than light, reaching Earth in just a few hours. On the orbital command station high above the planet, alarms began ringing in the middle of the night. Admiral Park Ji-woo was woken from sleep and rushed to the command center in his pajamas. The main room was full of people running around, checking computers and talking loudly. Admiral Park Ji-woo was an old man who had spent 50 years in space. He had seen many things, but never anything like this. "Show me the message," he ordered. The recording of Krextal played on the main screen. When it finished, the room was silent. Everyone looked at Admiral Park Ji-woo, waiting for orders. "Get me Dr. Kim So-ra from the Alien Studies Department," the Admiral said, "and call General Cho Min-ho. Wake up, everyone important. We have work to do." Dr. Kim So-ra arrived within an hour. She was a small woman with gray hair who had spent her life studying the possibility of meeting aliens. She watched the recording 3 times, taking notes. "What do you think?" Admiral Park Ji-woo asked her. "They are very confident," Dr. Kim So-ra said. "Too confident. They think they know everything about us from watching our TV shows and reading our books. But they only see the surface. They do not understand what humans really are." General Cho Min-ho arrived and watched the recording. He was a big man with scars on his face from old battles. When the recording ended, he was quiet for a long time. "How many ships do they have?" he finally asked. "Our long-range scanners count at least 10,000 ships moving toward our space," reported a young officer. "Each one is bigger than our largest battleship." General Cho Min-ho nodded slowly. "And how many warships do we have?" "Maybe 300 that could fight something that big," the officer answered. The general smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Then we cannot win a normal war. So what do we do?" Admiral Park Ji-woo asked. Dr. Kim So-ra looked at both men. "We show them what happens when someone threatens human children." That night, Admiral Park Ji-woo sent secret messages to every human world, every space station, every ship. The messages were short and simple, but they made people react in a very strange way. On Mars, engineer Ryu Taimin read the message and started laughing. On the moon, Dr. Yang Haiwan smiled and walked to a locked room she had not entered in 20 years. On the research station near Jupiter, Dr. Shin Ye-jin actually rubbed her hands together with excitement. Across human space, people were not panicking. They were not crying or running away. Instead, they were smiling. And in secret places, long-hidden projects began to wake up. The Vorthak expected fear. They expected humans to beg for mercy. They had conquered 43 other species, and it always went the same way. The aliens would make demands, the species would be afraid, and then they would surrender. But humans were different. Humans had been the most dangerous predators on their home world. They had climbed to the top of the food chain not by being the biggest or strongest, but by being the smartest and most creative. And now someone had threatened their children. The 7-day countdown had begun. But the Vorthak did not understand what they had started. Dr. Lee Min-jae had been waiting his entire life for this moment. As the head of humanity's most secret project, he had spent 40 years preparing for a day he hoped would never come. But now that day was here and he was ready. He stood in a control room buried deep beneath the surface of Earth. The room did not appear on any public maps. Most governments did not know it existed. Only a few dozen people in the entire human race knew what really happened in this place. The walls were covered with screens showing data from every human world. Power levels, energy flows, production rates, and thousands of other measurements scrolled past in endless streams of numbers. To most people, it would have looked like chaos. But Dr. Lee Min-jae could read it like a book, and the story it told made him smile. Status report, he called out to his team. Aurora Initiative is at 70% activation, reported Dr. Kim Yo-jin from her station. All civilian power grids are operating at maximum safe levels. Prometheus research facilities are online and producing, added engineer Park Young-min. Material synthesis is ahead of schedule. Dr. Lee Min-jae nodded. Everything was going perfectly. The Vorthak thought they were looking at scattered human colonies with basic technology. They had no idea what they were really seeing. For 300 years, humanity had been preparing for this day. Not because they expected to meet the Vorthak specifically, but because they knew that somewhere in the galaxy, there would be someone like them, someone who believed that strength came from taking things away from others, someone who would try to make humans into slaves. The secret was hidden in plain sight. Every human colony looked peaceful and normal from the outside. But underneath, they were all connected by the largest manufacturing network ever built. On the agricultural world of New Busan, farmer Park Da-yoon was watching her wheat fields transform. The golden grain that had grown there for 50 years was being harvested by machines that moved like water, flowing across the land. But the machines were not just collecting wheat. Hidden beneath the soil were pipes and cables that connected every farm on the planet. What looked like irrigation systems were actually conduits for exotic matter. The wheat fields themselves were just a cover for massive underground factories that had been growing larger every year. Park Da-yoon pressed a button on her control device. Across the horizon, the ground began to open in perfectly straight lines. Platforms rose up from beneath the earth, each one holding equipment that sparkled like captured starlight. The peaceful farm was revealing its true nature as a weapons production facility. But these were not normal weapons. Humans had learned long ago that the best way to win a war was to change the rules completely. Captain Kang Woo-sung stood on the bridge of his ship, the Daegu's Honor, and tried to explain to his confused crew what was about to happen. "Captain," said his first officer, Lieutenant Bae Soo-min, "I do not understand. The Vorthak have ships that can destroy planets. How can we fight them?" Captain Kang Woo-sung looked out at the stars and smiled the same calm smile that humans were showing everywhere. "We are not going to fight them, Lieutenant. Fighting is what they expect. Fighting is what they know how to do. Then what are we going to do? We are going to show them what happens when someone threatens human children." Lieutenant Bae Soo-min shook her head. "But sir, with respect, what can we show them that would matter? They have conquered 43 species. They have weapons we cannot match." Captain Kang Woo-sung turned to face his crew. Every person on the bridge was listening, waiting for an answer that would make sense of the impossible situation. "Tell me, Lieutenant," the captain said, "what is the most dangerous animal on Earth?" Lieutenant Bae Soo-min thought for a moment. "Humans, sir?" "Correct. And why are humans the most dangerous? Because we are smart? Partly. But lots of animals are smart. The real answer is that humans are dangerous because we do not just adapt to our environment. We change our environment to suit us. We do not just use tools. We make tools that make other tools. We do not just solve problems. We solve the problem of how to solve problems." The captain pointed to the main screen, which showed the distant glow of stars. "The Vorthak think in terms of ships and weapons and conquest, but humans think bigger. We think in terms of stars. Far away, in the asteroid belt, Dr. Choi Hyo-jun was putting the finishing touches on calculations that would have been impossible just 50 years earlier. His computers were running simulations of stellar behavior, predicting exactly how a star would react to the right kind of stimulation. Gravitational resonance cascade is within acceptable parameters, he reported to Dr. Lee. Min-jae on Earth. Magnetic field manipulation is showing green across all test scenarios. We are ready to proceed. Dr. Lee Min-jae looked at the countdown timer on his main screen. 2 days, 14 hours until the Vorthak deadline. More than enough time. Begin final satellite positioning, he ordered. Across the galaxy, the small objects that the Vorthak had been tracking made their last movements. They were simple devices, barely larger than a person, and they had been drifting through space for years. The aliens had scanned them dozens of times and found nothing threatening. They appeared to be harmless scientific instruments, the kind that humans use to study space weather and solar radiation. But these satellites were actually the most sophisticated pieces of technology that humanity had ever created. Each one contained a quantum resonance generator, capable of manipulating the fundamental forces of nature. When used together, they could do something that no other species in the galaxy had ever attempted. They could turn a star into a precision instrument. The Vorthak were becoming more nervous with each passing hour. Their sensors detected massive energy buildups across human space, but they could not identify the source or purpose of the activity. Their analysis computers kept reporting impossible readings. War Prime, reported Yexmar. Human power consumption has now increased by 800%. They are drawing energy from sources we cannot locate. Our best scientists cannot explain what they are doing. Krextal studied the reports with growing unease. In his 300 years of conquest, he had seen many species try desperate last-minute defenses. Some had hidden weapons, some had secret allies, some had tried to escape to other dimensions, but none of them had ever done anything like this. What is the status of their military forces? He asked. Unchanged, War Prime. They have not mobilized any significant fleets. Their ships remain in normal patrol patterns. They do not appear to be preparing for battle. Then what are they preparing for? Yexmar hesitated. We do not know, War Prime. But our psychologists are reporting that human emotional patterns have stabilized at levels we have never seen before. They are not just unafraid. They are confident. It is as if they know something we do not. On the research station near Jupiter, Dr. Shin Ye-jin was working with equipment that had been banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. The machines in her laboratory could manipulate matter at the quantum level, changing the basic rules of physics in small areas of space. She was not building weapons. She was building keys. Keys that could unlock the secret doors in reality itself. Quantum field manipulation is stable, she reported to the network. Space-time distortion is within acceptable limits. We are ready for stellar interface. All across human space, similar reports were coming in. On Mars, Ryu Taiman confirmed that the atmosphere processors were ready to channel exotic energy. On Luna, Yang Hai-wan verified that the moon's hidden power grid could handle the massive loads they were about to place on it. Humanity was revealing its greatest secret. They had never stopped being predators. For 300 years, they had explored the galaxy in ships that looked peaceful and harmless. They had built colonies that appeared to be simple farming communities and research stations. They had signed treaties that banned dangerous weapons and promised to be good galactic citizens. But underneath it all, they had been preparing. Every human world was connected to every other human world by technology that operated outside normal physics. Every peaceful colony had the capability to become a weapons factory in a matter of hours. Every research station could become a fortress that could reshape reality itself. The Vorthak had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that humans were like other species. They thought that humans would fight the same way everyone else fought, with ships and guns and explosions. But humans had learned something different during their long history. The best way to win any fight was to make sure the fight happened on terms that only you understood. On the final day, Admiral Park Ji-woo sent one last message to the Vorthak fleet. War Prime Krextal, he said, humanity thanks you for your patience. We have completed our preparations. You demanded our submission. In response, we offer you a choice. You may leave our space in peace and we will forget this unfortunate misunderstanding, or you may stay and learn why humanity has never been conquered. Your demonstration will begin in 1 hour. We suggest you pay close attention. Class is about to begin. Something very strange was happening across human space, and the Vorthak could not understand it. On Luna Base, engineer Yang Hai-wan walked through the gray metal hallways with a big smile on her face. She had not smiled like this in years. Her co-workers stopped to stare as she passed by. Yang Hai-wan was known for being serious and quiet, but now she was almost skipping as she walked. She stopped at a door marked with warning signs in red letters. The signs said things like, "Authorized personnel only," and "Danger, restricted area." Yang Hai-wan pressed her hand against a scanner. The machine beeped, and the heavy door opened with a deep rumbling sound. Inside the room were machines that most people had never seen. They looked like normal computers, but they were connected to cables as thick as a person's arm. The cables ran into the floor and disappeared into the moon's rock. Yang Hai-wan sat down at a keyboard and started typing very fast. "Time to wake up, sleeping beauty," she said to herself, still smiling. On Mars, terraformer Ryu Tai-min was having the same kind of morning. He stood on the observation deck of the atmosphere processing station, looking out at the red desert. The station was huge, with towers and pipes that stretched to the horizon. Most people thought it was just for making air that humans could breathe. Ryu Tai-min knew better. His personal computer chimed with a new message. It was from Admiral Park Ji-woo on Earth. The message was very short. "Begin Phase 7. Authorization Code. Starlight Protocol." Ryu Tai-min laughed out loud. He had been waiting 30 years to see those words. He walked to his control panel and entered a password that he had memorized but never used. Hidden screens came to life all around him. The displays showed power levels, energy flows, and status reports for systems that were not supposed to exist. "Computer," he said, "activate the Aurora Initiative." "Aurora Initiative activated," the computer replied. "Warning, this will draw power from all other systems. Estimated time to full activation, 6 days, 14 hours. "Perfect timing," Ryu Tai-min said. He was grinning so wide his face hurt. High above Earth on the Quantum Research Station, Dr. Shin Ye-jin was practically dancing as she walked to the forbidden laboratories. These labs had been sealed since the year 2298, when the Geneva Conventions for Stellar Warfare had banned certain types of research. The treaty said that some knowledge was too dangerous for anyone to have, but the treaties also had an emergency clause. If humanity itself was threatened with extinction, the seals could be broken. Dr. Shin Ye-jin entered her codes and watched as blast doors opened for the first time in almost a century. Inside, machines waited in perfect condition, maintained by automatic systems. These were not weapons in any normal sense. They were tools for changing reality itself. "Hello, old friends," she said to the machines. "Ready to go to work?" All across human space, similar scenes were playing out. On research stations and hidden bunkers in the basements of normal-looking buildings, humans were opening doors that had been locked for generations. They were activating systems that most people did not know existed. The Vorthak were watching all of this, and they were confused. War Prime Krextel stood in the command center of his flagship, studying reports from his intelligence officers. The Vorthak had been monitoring human communications for weeks before making contact. They had learned the human languages, studied their culture, and analyzed their technology. Everything they saw told them that humans were weak. Humans fought wars with simple projectile weapons and chemical explosives. Their ships were slow and lightly armed. Their planets had no significant defenses. When the Vorthak studied human history, they saw a species that spent most of its time fighting itself over small pieces of land and limited resources. But now the humans were acting wrong. "Report." Krextel ordered his chief analyst, a thin Vorthak named Yexmar. "War Prime, the human response is not following the expected pattern," Yexmar said. He was clearly nervous. "In our previous conquests, fear levels spike immediately after the ultimatum. Panic spreads through their communication networks. Leaders begin arguing about surrender terms." Krextal's forearms crossed impatiently. "And the humans? They are smiling, War Prime. We are detecting massive spikes in positive emotional indicators across all human worlds. Our psychological profile suggested they would be afraid. Instead, they appear to be excited. On the main screen, Yexmar showed recordings from human colonies. Children were playing in parks while their parents watched with calm expressions. Workers were going to their jobs as if nothing had happened. In some places, humans were actually celebrating, throwing parties and laughing with their friends. "Are they insane?" Krextal asked. "We do not believe so, War Prime. But we are detecting massive energy buildups across human space. Power consumption has increased by 300% on every human world. They are activating systems that we cannot identify." Captain Namgite, commander of the human warship Soul's Pride, chose that moment to send a message to the Vorthak fleet. His ship was small and old compared to the alien vessels, but he broadcast on all frequencies with confidence. "Greetings, War Prime Krextal," Captain Namgite said. He was smiling too, the same calm smile that humans were showing everywhere. "Thank you for the 7-day deadline. We appreciate your consideration. 7 days should be sufficient time for our preparations." "Preparations for what?" Krextal demanded. "You will see," Captain Namgite replied. "We hope you will find our response educational." The transmission ended. Krextal felt something he had never experienced in 300 years of conquest. It was a cold feeling in his stomach, a worry that something was going wrong. He had destroyed civilizations that had stood for thousands of years. He had seen species beg for mercy and offer everything they owned just to live. Never had anyone thanked him for giving them time to prepare. "Increase surveillance on all human activities," he ordered. "I want to know what they are preparing." But the Vorthak scanners could not penetrate the hidden facilities that were coming online across human space. They detected massive energy signatures, but the sources were shielded by technology they did not recognize. Their analysis computers kept giving them impossible readings. On a small research station near the asteroid belt, Dr. Choi Hyojun was working with equations that would have terrified most scientists. He was calculating the precise amount of energy needed to make a star change its behavior. Not to make it explode, which was relatively easy, but to make it dance. The math was incredibly complex. It required understanding stellar physics at a level that few beings in the galaxy had achieved. But humans had been studying stars for centuries, learning their secrets, figuring out how they worked. Dr. Choi Hyojun finished his calculations and smiled. The numbers were perfect. "Computer," he said, "send these coordinates to all Aurora stations. Begin satellite positioning for stellar resonance cascade." "Understood," the computer replied. "Estimated time to optimal positioning: 5 days, 8 hours. Across the galaxy, small objects that looked like simple research satellites began moving. They had been in space for years, ignored by everyone as harmless scientific instruments. But now they were taking new positions around stars, forming patterns that would have been impossible to see unless someone knew exactly what to look for. The Vorthak detected the satellite movements but could not understand their purpose. The objects were too small to be weapons, too simple to be dangerous. But their positions followed mathematical patterns that hurt to think about. On the 5th day, Admiral Park Jiwoo sent another message to War Prime Krextal. "We have received your ultimatum," the Admiral said. His voice was polite and calm. "Humanity appreciates your offer, but we must respectfully decline. We do not surrender. We do not submit. Instead, we would like to show you something. Please observe the following demonstration." War Prime Krextal watched the message with growing unease. In his experience, species that were about to die did not speak so calmly. They did not smile. They definitely did not offer to show him anything. But he was about to learn that humans were not like other species. Humans were the children of a world where the most dangerous predator was the one that could think, plan, and create. And now those predators were done hiding what they could really do. The demonstration was about to begin,